with a mustache like that, we're definitely gonna have to save the world. Oh man. Welcome to Baldur's Gate 3, everybody. Episode 1 of the only game where the rules for facial hair absolutely do not exist. So, I've only ever played a little bit of this game before. This is going to be my first full playthrough. But basically, the backstory for the beginning of the game is that we were aboard some kind of giant flying mind flayer ship. And aboard that ship, the mind flayer takes a little shrimpy kind of thing. It's like somewhere between a shrimp and a worm. And he sticks it in our brain. And right after that happens, the ship flies into this medieval-looking city and starts abducting people, pulling them up with tentacles, and putting them in pods, presumably to infect them as well with these shrimp. A bunch of dragons fly out of the sky and attack the ship, causing it to go down after it teleports a couple times. But yeah, that's where we are. The butthole doors, I just have to say, excellent touch. Definitely one of the reasons this is Game of the Year for 2023. No other studio is brave enough to put in a butthole door that you have to walk through in the first 5 minutes of gameplay. Anyway, we go through the door, we're looking around, I'm a little confused until on the other side of the room I spot something interesting. So I go to the other side of the room and I take this elevator up and I see this dude over here in this chair and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And I realize he has no skull. So I talk to him and this is what happens.
You realize you're talking to an intellect devourer, a minion of the mind flayers who abducted you.
So it becomes clear to me at this point that this poor guy, poor elf it looks like, has also been infected, but with a different kind of brain shrimp than I was. And the brain now seems to be sentient. And I don't know if he's talking to me or if this is some sort of telepathy, but I get a nat 20 on attempting to remove him from his skull. And this is what happened.
The brain lifts from the skull, but you notice an opportunity. You could cripple the strange creature, making it.
So after probably too much
subservient,
deliberation,
should it prove a
considering that we're
threat.
still in the first 5 minutes of the game, I decide not to cripple it. And it turns out to be a pretty good idea, because what I wind up with is my very own brain dog octopus
The creature
companion.
pauses,
And he winds up
listening.
being able to fight for
Something
me.
behind
Which,
your eyes seizes in
you know,
recognition.
pretty cool.
We must go to the helm. At the helm, we are needed.
So I take the dog's advice and I make my way out of this room, out onto what appears to be a veranda of sorts. I don't know, it might just be an exposed chunk of the ship after a dragon attack. And as I come out here, there's this lady up there on that piece of bone or whatever, and she somersaults out of nowhere, dragonflies overhead, and threatens me with a sword.
This, we carry mind flayer parasites. Unless we escape, unless we are cleansed, our bodies and minds will be tainted and twisted.
Mind
Within
flayer
days, we will be
parasites. So
Mind
these
flayers.
shrimp, these little worms that were slid into our eye holes by the mind flayers are mind flayer parasites, and they're gonna turn us into mind
First,
flayers
we
if we don't
exterminate
reach the
these.
helm and get
Then
off
we find
this
the helm
ship.
and take control
So that's
of
where
the
we
ship.
head. But on the
As
way
for
there,
that
we get
thing,
our first
it will
taste
remain
of
tame as
combat
long as it
in
believes we
Baldur's
are
Gate
thralls.
3.
It may be of use in the fight to come.
Combat in Baldur's Gate 3 is based on the rules of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. It's turn-based. At the start of combat, you roll for initiative. Every player and or NPC involved in combat takes a turn and does whatever they want to do. This first fight, pretty easy. It's the beginning of the game. But as we progress through our playthrough, there are going to be a lot harder fights. So,
Now,
stay tuned
to
for
the
that.
helm.
So we make our way out. We grab a little health at that sort of tentacle hut-looking thing, loot some bodies that are scattered around on the ship. Presumably people who were taken from the city. And then we come up again to another beautiful butthole door. As we go through it, we begin to hear somebody screaming for help. Get me out of this thing. So on and so forth. And we meet Shadowheart.
Get me out of this damn thing! We have no time for stragglers.
The construction is too alien. Nothing looks familiar.
This ship is crashing. Do you intend to die for a stranger?
Try that contraption next to the pod. They did something to it when they sealed me in. Hurry! Please!
The mechanisms are completely unrecognizable at first, but then you spy an empty socket.
Whatever fits in that socket must power this thing.
We've got to find a way to get Shadowheart out. Now, our other companion, the warrior queen, Leslie, or whatever her name is, she doesn't want you to waste any time. And you can leave, I think. I don't think there are any consequences. But if you want to get this Ember Blade that I talk about in the beginning of the video, you've got to rescue Shadowheart. So you're going to want to come into this room, and then you're going to loot this Eldritch Rune from this dude way over here in the back, and that's going to allow you to get Shadowheart out. Now, on our way out of the room, we notice another console, and we go by, we stick our hand on it to activate it, and all of a sudden, the pod in the center of the room begins to affect its occupant. And we get a pretty grisly scene of her transforming into a mind flayer. So, that's what we're avoiding for ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. We're trying to get these shrimp out of our brains so this doesn't happen to us.
Changed at the pull of a lever. How? If we are not purified, this may be our fate.
So, having come back from that grisly scene with new knowledge of the urgency with which we need to remove these parasites from our brain, we go back to this other console, and what we do is we stick the Eldritch Plate in it, which releases Shadowheart. Now, I said something earlier about how you need Shadowheart to get this Ember Blade thing, but you don't actually need it. You just need somebody who has command spell. And what that command spell will allow you to do is, well, you'll see.
More like a beating heart than a machine. You feel the biomechanical brain of the console process your command and yield to it. A shiver runs across your mind. You feel sated.
Having rescued Shadowheart, now we've got ourselves a nice little team. We got Leslie, the warrior princess, Shadowheart, and our favorite dog, the Brain. And we're met with a pretty crazy scene, to be honest. I don't really know what's going on here because I haven't played past this point yet, but we've got demons fighting mind flayers on the ship. I really still don't know who the dragons were and who the wizards were, but that was in the opening cutscene. Y'all can watch that if you want. But we have to connect the transponder, and the mind flayer's telling us this. But Leslie says that's the answer. So that's what we do. And the brain dog also concurs. Anyway, this also happens to be the part where we can get the Ember Blade. So that big old demon guy up here, who's fighting the Mind Flayer, has a sick sword. He's also super strong. So it's really best not to fight him. But what we're going to do is we're going to send Shadowheart over there, and we're going to have her use Command Drop. And that'll cause him to drop the sword, so we can take it for ourselves.
Impero
With the sword dropped, I sent my main character, Bodey the bear, best druid around by the way, to go pick up the sword. Now, he's a druid, so he's not going to be able to wield that, but I sent him over just because I figure I'm probably going to be able to keep him. I'm still not sure if I'm going to be able to keep the other two. And eventually we'll have a use for the sword. Now that we've got the sword, we send everybody over, we fight the rest of the demons, we pull the transponder, and the ship goes down. After a dragon flies in, blows everything up, we hit the transponder, we teleport out of whatever hell world we were in, the ship crashes, and we land on the beach. And this is the end of episode 1, and where the playthrough really begins. So, if you enjoyed this, please stay tuned for episode 2. I'm having a great time, and we will see you next time.